I'm Michelle. Thank you guys for coming this evening on this cold and rainy night. I'm very surprised to see so many people who came. Surviving design politics. I have a few questions before I begin. Show of hands. How many of you here are designers? Okay, that's kind of what I expected. How many of you here are developers? Great. And product managers? Cool. And I'd like to know where you work. How many people work at a startup? Agencies? Anyone working at an agency? Few. Okay. And anyone work in-house? Anyone who did not raise their hand that I have left out that really wants to tell me what they do? Okay. So now that I know about you, I will tell you a little bit about me. So I've had a range of experiences. I started out as a print and production designer. I worked in publishing and advertising, and I did that for about 9 years. I transitioned into account management. I worked at a packaging design agency. And then I transitioned again into digital products, where I've been working for the past 7 years. Now, before we start this talk, I know that I got y'all here because it's called Surviving Design Politics. But I'm going to be completely honest. I hate politics. Hate it. I've spent my entire career, in fact, trying to avoid them. Because this is what I think of when I think of politics. I think of people who yell at each other and try to undermine each other's authority. I think of people hurling nasty remarks. I think of people who lie. I just don't want any part of this. So instead, when I started my career, I was terrified of saying the wrong thing at the wrong time. And I instead tried to listen. And I tried to listen very closely when people would come to me with problems. And I would ask questions to get at the heart of what their problem really was. And then I would figure out what I could do to help that person and what I could give them in order for that person to help achieve their goals. And then after a while, I would make problems go away. And my team trusted me. And leadership trusted me. And I learned how to use this trust to guide key decisions throughout the design process. And someone recently said to me, well, that sounds like politics. So today, I'm going to share with you 3 ways to help guide your design agenda. Know who makes the decisions. Create and build trust. And own your behavior. I'm going to go through each one at a time. But for those of you who like to take photos, this is a good one. So let's start with the first one. Know who makes the decisions. In my experience, the real decisions are made by a very select few. And in order to influence those decisions, you need to know who is making them first. So it could be the C-suite, right? It could be executives, company founders, if you work at a startup, or a small company. If there's a board that you have to answer to, they're also key decision makers, and trusted advisors. Trusted advisors could be anyone who handles the budget and tells you there's not enough money, to your boss's wife who doesn't like the color you chose. It's a pretty mixed bag. But If your goal is to create a product that is brought to life, remember that it doesn't stand a chance without the buy-in of this group. So, get to know your key decision makers, all right? I mean, figure out who they are. Listen for phrases like, we should run that by so-and-so. And figure out whose opinions have the most weight, because that's going to be key to getting approval. And I would also encourage you to always think 2 steps above your immediate supervisor, because I know from experience, I would always be trying to please the person who I had to show my design work to. But often that person wasn't the one who had final say. And I've seen approvals get overturned again and again and again. So it's better for you to know up front who actually has the final say. And when you figured out who those people are, find out what their background is. I love LinkedIn for this, by the way. I'm a huge fan. Just look them up. Do they come from business or engineering or marketing? Because honestly, most of them do not come from design. And their perspective is going to be shaped on their previous experience, not yours. Now, once you figure out who they are, the natural next step would be to talk to them. But this is going to depend on where you work, all right? Now, there are a handful of people who are at a startup, and if you work at a startup or a small company, it's so much easier because you're probably sitting right next to them. So take advantage of that, because again, these are your key decision makers. You need to know what makes them happy before your product stands a chance. Get to know about their families, find out what they do outside of work, and keep mental notes, because you're going to see them again, and you're going to want to strike a conversation that has nothing to do with your product, just to be nice. I used to work with the president of this company, and I still remember his wife is an artist. A painting that she did is hanging in his office, and he has a daughter named Lola. And that's enough. I could see him now, and I could walk down the street and say to him, "Hi, how is your daughter and your wife?" That's all you need to be able to do. If you're at a large company, this is admittedly going to be much harder, right? Because I've worked with companies with over 100,000 people. So how do you do that? Well, you can try to at least move 2 steps up and take every opportunity you can to meet people that are at a higher level of leadership. You know, if you see them at a status meeting, like a person who's a special guest, introduce yourself. Maybe there's a town hall that you might be able to see them at. Maybe there's a birthday party where someone shows up that you haven't met them. Introduce yourself. Tell them your name. Tell them what you do. Tell them what you have worked on. A little face and name recognition goes a long way, and I would encourage you all to try. And if you work at an agency, remember that you have to get buy-in from the key decision makers in your client's company, not your own. So that's tricky. But I would say start with your day-to-day contact and just ask them who they're going to need approvals from and why. So get to know your key decision makers, and then get to know the business side. There are so many designers that don't do this, okay? And I certainly didn't for many years, but I definitely do now. Because you're going to have to present design to stakeholders who at the end of the day don't really care about the design. But they do care about how the design will serve the business. So before you do any design work, why don't you even just do a SWOT analysis? Identify the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats in the business that you're designing for. And do a little research. Find some data to actually support your design initiatives. Proactively get feedback from people who are even outside your company. Is this even a problem for the average consumer? or whoever your target is. And even just run a few quick experiments. We do this at Alpha all the time. If I don't have data to back up my design decisions, I hear about it at my OKR meetings every single time. So yeah, I mean, there's really no excuse. You can do this very simply, very cheaply, very efficiently with just a few people. So all these ideas are just methods that you can use to gather information and phrases to back up your work. And I suggest you do that before you ever get into the room, because it will enrich your knowledge of the design process, and it will increase your credibility as a business leader. I have heard far too often now about people complaining about designers just making pretty pictures, and I'm tired of it. There are a lot of smart designers out there, and unfortunately, I didn't actually think about that at the time because I didn't realize that was part of my job. But increasingly, we are becoming more important for the business. So start now. And, expect opposition. It always happens. It always happens. I have worked on partnership products with senior leadership. I worked on one with a global financial company and a major retailer where we did a pattern of the two logos alternating for the background of the product. And it broke every single guideline. And it took so many calls and emails and meetings to get approval for this one pattern. And we did it, but it made me realize that at the leadership level, most design decisions aren't actually about design at all. They are about people asserting their authority. So just expect it and accept it. Just know it's coming. So that way, when it happens, you don't run into a room and go, oh my God, they just tore everything apart and I have to do this over and what do I do? No. You should have gone into that room prepared, and if you didn't, well, you'll do it again better next time. So again, get to know your key decision makers, get to know the business side, and expect opposition. The next thing I want to talk about is create and build trust. So this is simple. You create and build trust by doing what you said you were going to do in the time you said you were going to do it. And that's it. So what you need to do is you have to start collecting what I call trust credits. All right? Now when you start, you usually get a few bonus, because no one starts at 0. And every design you complete on time, you get a trust credit. If there are no spelling errors in your design, you get another trust credit. If you delivered 2 design options, you get another trust credit. So you start collecting, right? And you collect in different departments. Don't just collect in the design department. You want to collect in the product management department, in the leadership department, client management, sales, marketing, all of them. You want credits in every department, okay? You want to look like this. You want to have banked a ton of credits because you're going to need it. Trust is currency that you will need to negotiate, all right? To negotiate, to ask for favors, to get someone to give you the benefit of the doubt when things start going wrong. And to be honest, you get one little credit for not making spelling mistakes, but you have to spend a ton to actually trade in those favors. So you have to collect now, all right? And the flip side of this is if you don't have enough credits, when you start losing them, you can lose them just like that. And honestly, you can lose them as fast as you earn them. In fact, you can probably have negative balance depending on your transaction. So if your team thinks you're not holding up your end of the deal, they're not going to trust you again. And once your trust credits are gone, it is so much harder to get them back. All right, people are going to be waiting for you to make mistakes. They're not going to trust you to do your job, and you could even lose your job. I have fired people. I have fired designers over not making deadlines and not delivering design work when they said they would. And I have heard every excuse on the planet. And I don't care that your Photoshop is crashing because you had to do an update. I don't care, all right? My clients don't care, and if you make me look bad, I don't want to work with you. So, how do you earn credits? Just make everyone's job easier, all right? And again, I want to start with senior leadership because I think that they are really important. And senior leadership, they're just responsible for two things, all right? Increasing revenue and decreasing cost. That's pretty much it. So any design decision you propose should be a factor of one of those two things. How does it increase value, or how does it increase cost, or how does it decrease cost? And just be proactive about that, because if you come to them with decisions that already do these things, you're actually taking a problem off of their plate. So I once managed a site redesign. Actually, I managed several site redesigns with this problem that was sold to the client at a very low budget. And I looked at the scope and I said, this is too low. And I told the CEO, and he disagreed, and he said it was my job to make sure we weren't. So I tried, I did, but the hours just kept going up. The client was very demanding. We had constant changes. And so I started writing emails to the client, like really nice ones, politely saying, oh, I understand, but this is out of scope. And oh, I totally hear what you're saying, but this is also out of scope. And I started to detail all these changes. And then I started to proactively draft change orders with the amount of money it would cost to add these things to the scope. So that when I went to the CEO, I had a nice package for him where I laid everything out and said, here's what's going on, here's the money we need, what are you going to do about it? I said it in a nicer way, though. And we had a call. We had a call with the client, and we were actually able to negotiate an additional fee. And after we launched the site, the CEO actually admitted to me that, in fact, he had underestimated the budget. And after that, I was asked for my input and opinion on all budgets going forward. So again, just take things off their plate. Product managers. I saw that there are a few of you here tonight. Well, the truth is it's going to depend on what kind of product manager you have. Because I'll just be honest here. I've met some of you, and some of you are super smart and really, really sharp. And then I have heard horror stories from designers who complain about their product manager not knowing what the hell they are doing. So there seems to be a very mixed bag. And from what I know about product management, a lot of people have just stumbled onto it. And again, a lot of them don't come from design. They come from business or engineering or marketing. So here's what I've learned. Ask relevant questions up front. They might not know what to ask in terms of making a design successful, so help them. Help them get to the right questions so you can get to the right answers. The easy ones are what business problem is the PM trying to solve, or how does it affect the user? We all know that. But dig deeper, all right? What is the real problem going on here? There might be some conversation he had with leadership he is not telling you. Try to find out. And what data does that PM have? PMs should have data. And if the PM doesn't have data, go and get some data for them. You might as well, because that's only going to inform your decision, and that will help support your decision if you have to present it. Show your skills and actually find multiple ways to solve the problem. Don't just pitch one. Don't just get stuck in one design idea and design the hell out of it. Have 4. And then out of your 4, select 2 and present those 2. And when they don't like those 2, come back and say, oh, wait, I have 3 more. All right? Have options. But also, don't be afraid to push back and defend your work. Because, interestingly enough, the product managers that I know all say to me, most of them say to me, I'm not a designer. I hear that a lot. And I also hear stories around how they sit right next to the designer and they watch the designer to make sure that the designer is doing the work that they need, because they're afraid the designer is going to go off track and make something that's not necessary. And that made me think, hold on, what's going on here? What's going on where your product manager has to watch you all day making sure you're designing the right thing? There's clearly a lack of communication happening up front. So don't be afraid to push back. And again, I'm going to say it again, back up your decisions with any type of data, any type of experimentation you can do. Because again, these people tend not to be designers, and they don't understand why you chose a font, and they don't understand color theory. They won't if they don't have a design background. It's really not a good use of your time to try to convince them how to be a designer. It's a better use of your time to try to become a better business person. And one last note, just have a little empathy, because they're really in a tough spot. I worked on a high-profile e-commerce site with the product manager, and he gave me a bunch of changes right before we were going to launch the site. And I pushed back, and I said, "We can't do that. We're in code freeze, and we have to bug fix and all these things. We can't do it." And he got very quiet on the phone, and he said, "No, we have to do it." And he sounded scared. And then he basically said, "This is not an option," because we were launching the site right before Black Friday. And his company would lose thousands in revenue if we didn't launch on time. And at that moment, I just realized how many forces were out of my control and how many people must be talking in this guy's ear. So I said, "Okay, we'll do it." And what I did is I made a plan to roll out these changes in a way that would have the least amount of impact, because that's really all you can do in this case. But again, just have a little empathy for their position. And now I want to talk about developers. So in my experience, again, you should have a little empathy for them too, because they are often working with legacy systems that are 20 years old, or dealing with technical debt, dealing with systems that they didn't build, but now they're expected to make them better. So understand their constraints up front, just get that they're not, they can't make everything happen that everyone wants. And some minor things, right? Consider editing the content first, which I think is something a lot of us don't think about. We think about a redesign, making new graphics, making different colors, really having it have impact visually. And sometimes to improve a user flow, you just need to make the copy better. So think about how you can offer up simpler solutions that your dev team can actually execute faster as an intermediary step to where you want to go. Simplify your requests. Do you really need that feature? I have seen designs come in from designers where they're just making buttons and they're just putting stuff there. And that button actually has to do something, all right? Somebody has to build the flow behind that button. If that flow doesn't exist, there's all these other things that have to be built to support that one button. Where did that button come from? Oh, because the user needs to do this. Okay. Do you really need that feature? Or can you work with the structure that you have? All right? Never ask for a feature without finding out how hard it is to execute first. And then, instead of designing one-off mock-ups, ideally you're considering the existing UI patterns and trying to leverage what you have. I hope that we're all starting to think more about atomic design and how we can build design systems that can scale easily with a digital product. Because if you are not thinking about that, you should. Because if you're not designing in this fashion, you're designing a product that cannot scale. And that is actually going to be a huge problem. All right, so I've talked about these three groups. Now I'm going to talk about everyone else. And there is a reason why I have everyone else in this category. Because, and I'll be totally honest here, and I hate saying it, but in my experience, the real decision makers are not present in these groups. All right? Now, your final decision maker might have a background in one of these things. And in that case, these will be relevant priorities to that person. But it's all going to depend on your leadership, and that's going to depend on where you work. So you have to answer that question for yourself. You absolutely should take feedback from these people because they are important, right? Client success and sales, they talk to your customers. And marketing, their responsibility is to communicate effectively with the brand. And I threw in research because we have a research team, and I know that their main goal is just to optimize data. So again, it is really important to get their way in, but remember, honestly, their opinion is not going to trump senior leadership or key decision makers. So you always have to keep that in mind. For specific information on how to manage stakeholder types, I highly, highly recommend this book called Articulating Design Decisions by Tom Griever. Excellent, right? Excellent. You know, if you get anything out of this talk, just go and buy that book. All right? And then finally, own your behavior. All right? This is my favorite one because this is the one thing you can do without anybody's help. You can control what you say, and you can control what you do, but you cannot control anybody else, all right? And again, your stakeholders, they grew up differently than you do, they come from a different background, they have different concerns, they have different priorities. They are not you, so they're never gonna think like you, all right? So, what can you do with this power, right? Meet as many people as possible, all right? Because in order to create trust, you need to make allies. Allies get you through the day, all right? They support you when things get rough. And you want allies in all corners, okay? Speak with interns, speak with assistants, speak with accountants, I'm a big fan of speaking to people with the budget. Because if you don't know what the budget is and you're designing something that's way out of line, you've just wasted all that time. All right, know what that is up front. Talk to people you see in the hall. Like, they don't have to work directly with you. And it's great practice. The more people you talk to, the less afraid you are to talk to new people. Your goal is to find common ground with everyone you encounter. If you have similar interests or goals, you have a platform on which to build a relationship. So again, just learn about their lives and find out who's waiting for them when they get home. This is how I became a designer. I did not go to design school, and my first job out of college was a sales assistant for Backpacker magazine. But I always wanted to be a designer, and my uncle, who is one, said to me, why don't you see if you can design things at work? But that wasn't possible in my 3-person sales team. So I started to poke around, and I learned that the men's health art department actually was just right down the hall on my floor. So I, one day, introduced myself to a bunch of people who worked at Men's Health in the kitchen. And one of them was the design intern. And I'll never forget the day he came to my desk and he said, we have an opening. Are you interested? And that was that. So meet as many people as possible. And learn how to listen, okay? I mean, everyone who knows me, they know I talk a lot. I do. But I know how to listen too. And it's an art to listen closely to those around you and really treat their opinions with respect. Pay attention to what makes them happy as well as what frustrates them. Because at the end of the day, people will judge you based on how you make them feel. So make everyone feel important. And again, think through what they're saying. If they're asking you to design a landing page, find out why. What's it for? Is it going to go into a client presentation, or does it need to be live by the end of the day? These are two very different things. Or does it have to be both? All right? Find out before you even start. And also, Listen for negative feedback. Chances are, if you're doing a great job, no one will say anything, and that is a good day, all right? Listen for the negativity, and try to make sure people don't keep complaining about the same thing. If you get the same complaint twice in a row, it's actually an issue. Someone's trying to tell you something. I've been told that I make things too complicated. And it's because I love details. I love every little intricacy of everything. But details can be intimidating to people, or some people consider them unnecessary. So I have to edit what I say and who I say it to on a constant basis. And also, you know, one thing, when people think you aren't listening to them, they're probably gonna yell. All right? That's what that means. And I have been yelled at so many times. Okay? I have. The only thing you can do, actually, that's not true. There are two things you can do. You can yell back, which I've done. Doesn't end well, but it happens. Or you can stay calm and bring the energy down. You know, one time I was launching the redesign of a site, and I thought we were good to go to launch it that morning. We were getting it ready, and then the owner of the restaurant called me at the office and was furious because he thought the site was going to go live the night before, even though we didn't discuss any of that. But he thought it was going to go live the night before, and he had planned all this press and publicity in conjunction with the date of the launch. So he was mad, and he yelled at me and screamed in my ear. So I let him yell. And I was waiting for him to be done. And then he took a breath. And I said, okay, I understand that you are very upset. And I am very, very sorry about that. And we can keep talking if you want to. But I can't do anything until I get off the phone. So what would you like me to do? And he yelled a little more, and then he finally hung up. And then we got the site live in an hour. Okay. Make the most out of every task. So this is easy when you're doing work that you like, right? You're creating something awesome and you're feeling good about it. But what about the stuff you don't like? What about when someone says, hey, design this email for me? Or, you know, tells you to write copy and that's not your thing. What happens when you do that? So I would suggest a few things. Do it fast, especially if you're a designer. This is the time where you speed up and automate your workflow, all right? Set up your templates, organize your files, learn all the shortcuts. Because this way, when people ask for you to do this again, and they will, you can do it fast. Just knock that shit out and then move on. And then the great news is that you can use those skills to work on the products that you actually like. Or find another resource. Maybe there's someone around. Maybe there's an intern or an assistant or someone in a lower level position who wants to get out, who wants to take on some of the work. It's a great opportunity to teach leadership skills. At a company I worked with, the account coordinator really wanted to get into product management. And I let him sit on my calls, and I taught him about budgets and constraints, and he was happy to do it. I mean, he was ecstatic that he could do something else, and that gave me more time in my day to concentrate on more complex problems. And force yourself to use a new tool, all right? So if you have to do something shitty, use a new tool to do it. It might take you more time up front, all right? But the skills you learn will be worth that time. I built this in Remark.js, which I had never heard of until about 3 weeks ago when John told me about it. And yeah, it wasn't like an easy decision. Of course, you could bang out things with Keynote, but I decided, no, I want to try this, and I will never go back now. And now I understand how to read Markdown a lot better than I used to. I mean, the benefits are apparent. So it takes practice, but you can learn something new from even the most mundane tasks. And avoid saying, I don't know, all right? Because the person who's asking you is going to be thinking, why don't you know, all right? Isn't that your job? Why are we paying you? And this will make you look bad, and you are going to lose trust credits. So I'll tell you a secret. No matter what, it is always better to sound confident than uncertain, because people will doubt you when you doubt yourself. So if you're not sure, just say something like, let me find out. And buy yourself some time. And then come up with a solid plan and earn yourself better credits. Because remember, if you are not part of the solution, you are going to be perceived as part of the problem. All right, so know who makes the decisions, create and build trust, and own your behavior. And some final tips. Don't take things too seriously. We all have bad days, every single one of us, and none of us are perfect. So take a walk, take a breath, talk to a trusted friend, and come back to work. Don't let one bad moment cloud the relationship with you and your team. Who would you rather work with, all right? The negative Nancys and the gloomy Gus's of this world? Or the one who takes criticism in stride and lets it roll off their backs? And also, believe in your value, all right? You were hired for a reason. Your team needs your perspective and your skills. So your opinion does matter. Don't be afraid to voice it. Embrace your strengths and then chip away at your weaknesses and just try to be better than you were the day before. And also, as a designer, you're already considered a valued member of the team. Has anyone here heard of the Design Value Index? Okay, got one. So from 2004 to 2014, the Design Management Institute tracked the performance of US companies that were committed to design strategy. And they found that these companies outperformed the S&P 500 by 219%. All right, this is called the Design Value Index. So big businesses have the memo already, all right? Good design equals profit. So this is why, since 2004, 42 design firms have been acquired. And about 50% last year alone in 2015. This is a slide from the Design and Tech Report for 2016. It was published by KPCB and led by John Maeda. If you haven't read it, you should. It will give you a ton of valuable information and insight like this. Okay, so in closing, this should all sound like common sense. It sounds really simple, right? And yet, so many of us struggle with others when working on a team. There's no silver bullet to design politics. You have to work on improving yourself and your relationship with others every single day. But I promise you, if you put in the effort, things will actually get better. You just have to try. And I want to leave you with one final message from the only political figure that I like, and actually I love, Michelle Obama. I love her, I do. And she said this: people who are truly strong lift others up. Thank you. Oh, do we do questions now? Yes. All right, does anyone have any questions? No? Really? Yeah.
I think you give really great advice for someone working in an agency or client-side work. Do you have advice for teams that work on really small, agile startups that have to move very, very quick?
Oh, goodness. I mean, to be honest, the advice is the same. It's just that, I said do it every day. Do it every minute. Do it every hour. You have to maximize your time with your team as much as possible. again, if you'll notice, the content in this deck is not about how to become a better designer. It's really how to become a better partner. So if you're experiencing friction with your team, ask yourself why. You know, is someone on your team, is there a lack of trust on your team? Is someone not trusting another person to do their job? Because that blows up very quickly, and it causes a lot of frustration and resentment. So you have to nip that in the bud as fast as possible. And that's just, I mean, I don't know if that helps, but I still think it holds. It's just that like every moment, if you're standing next to a team member, you have to be asking yourself, what do I do to make the situation better? And I know that sounds crazy, but again, you can only affect what you do, all right? You can't control if they have a bad day. You can't control if they're mad at a client for not paying or something, right? It doesn't matter what it is, but you can't control that. So all you can do is be proactive in understanding their mood and their temperament and offer to help if you can. And again, that builds trust. Like you want to bank that trust, because if you're experiencing friction already, what that says to me is there's a lack of trust and you haven't built that up yet. Yes?
That was awesome, thank you. Number two, the penny jar is like a nice visual. I'm really curious about how you think about currency and trust and the credits. Like in your head, like how does that register? How do you keep track of it? Because that feels like a skill and that feels really interesting.
Oh, okay, well, I don't have a balance sheet in my head. I guess, again, these are just things I came up with, right, to help myself. I know that, you know, from the other side of it, right? So I work with designers all the time, and I get designs back, and I pay attention. I know which designers actually read the assignment. I know which designers actually delivered what I asked for, and I know who went above and beyond, because I look for things. So I have a sense of who I think is, I hate to say a more skilled designer, but one who is addressing the problem I've asked to solve, all right? I have a sense of who those designers are, and those people have my trust. But it takes a while for me to like, feel that way about people. You do it once, one time, you only get a little bit of trust. You have to repeat that cycle over and over, and that's how you build. So it's not really like a penny here, a penny there, but it's more like, you know, building a picture of that person, right? Oh, that person's good at this. Let's see if that person can do it again. Oh, that person did it again. Great. Let's see if they can do it again. Oh, they did it great. And then it goes like that, right? So the same thing, I think, applies to all of us, right? What are you good at? We're all good at something, all right? Build on that. The thing that you're good at, share it, and make it known that you're good at it, and give it to other people, and then they'll trust you to do that thing, and it's great, because that's the thing that you like, because you're good at it, right? But the problems come when people don't trust you to do things you're not good at. And usually the things we're not good at, we don't want to do, and that's probably why we're not doing them. So you have to also recognize what you're bad at and try to get better. And if someone gives you feedback and you don't take it, then that's a mark on you. And that actually erodes the trust that you got from doing all the good things. Yes?
In some of our earlier talks, you referenced the SWOT analysis also for one's self.
Yes.
And I thought that that was a really important aspect of like this whole, like the point that you were making. So I just would love to, you know, for me in the end, digging deeper into ourselves is a way to, like, for example, the fears part.
Yes.
You know, these are like nuances, so it might be interesting for you just to speak briefly. For those that aren't familiar and like the value of it.
Absolutely.
On an individual level.
Absolutely. I mean, to be totally honest, so my talk was just getting way too long. So I wrote an article that was actually published it was published last week, but if you subscribe to the Envision newsletter, it's part of the blog post that came out yesterday. The newsletter, I mean, on 6 ways, so it was called like 6 Ways to Modern Mentorship, something like that. And the beginning of the article talks about the SWOT analysis, the personal SWOT analysis. And the idea here is, again, we all have our strengths and weaknesses and opportunities and threats. So if you do a personal SWOT analysis, take a hard look at yourself and write them down, right? Like don't just kind of think to your day. Like actually do this exercise and write down what are you good at, what are you bad at, and what are your opportunities and threats for both of those issues. And you know, and again, I don't tell you to do things I haven't already done. So I'm good at detail. I'm really good at detail. And I have really good eyes, and I know I can see at a glance when something's wrong. And I've learned that throughout my career. I didn't actually know that was a strength until I worked at all these places who didn't have it, right? I worked at all these places who couldn't see what I could see. And over time, I realized, oh, this is a strength. But again, that could be considered a weakness because some people think I focus too much on the detail, right? So I have to push and pull. I have to learn how to deal that card when it works for me and to pull it back when I don't. Anything else? I'm just going to say a quick note if there's no other questions, or you can come pester me after if you want. This is the first time I've done this talk. I would love some feedback. You can take a business card at the corner there if you want to email me, or you can send me a direct message on Twitter, what have you. I'm easy to find. And I'm also, again, hiring if you want to sign up back there. But again, I really thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it, and would love your feedback. Does anyone have any more questions, though? I don't want to close unnecessarily. Yes?
Is it better to ask a client what to do or to tell a client what to do?
Neither. Neither. Because, first of all, no to the telling. Because every single one of us, don't care who you are, we all hate being told what to do. We do. We all want the ability to control and decide our own fates. So I wouldn't recommend that. If you ask the client what to do, you're not using your skills because they hired you to do something, all right? They hired you to do something they cannot do. So you need to dig deep and figure out what you think they should do and position it in a way so that they are receptive to hearing it. Yes?
Do you guys ever involve your clients in your design process?
Oh, that's a good question. Here, not as much. And the reason is that we focus on iteration time. So we test in 24-hour cycles. So it's very, very fast. And in order to cut through the lengthy reviews that clients tend to have, we'll get information from our clients and direction from the design from our account managers. And then my designers have about 10 hours or less to turn back in their assignment. So, and they're time boxed, so roughly about 3 hours per assignment. And the reason is to just keep moving. So no matter what, we always have a stimulated test. And that's the main reason, because we have involved our clients somewhat in the past, but I'm sure anyone who's worked with clients in design here can guess. You get emails, you get phone calls, and you get talking about like, well, maybe we should say this and not this, and you're not even testing the copy. Like that's happened, where our clients are noodling on the copy, and we're not even testing that. We're testing to find out if the user can push that button and know that that takes you to another section of the page. So it's really more about that interaction we're testing. So we work very closely with our account managers to have a better understanding of what the interaction is that we're testing, or what the stimuli we need to show for testing. And then we work with our designers to make sure they understand what needs to be shown.